And what is going on, hockey fans? It is, as always, your host of NHL Weekly, Neil Villapiano, and we welcome you to another edition of NHL Weekly right here exclusively on the Hockey Podcast Network YouTube channel. The best place to get everything you need to know and everything that's happening around the NHL. And as always, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and spending some time out of your days, specifically your Monday, since new episodes drop every Monday here on THPN. We really, really do appreciate it. And if you like what you see, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any new episodes that we post every Monday right here on the THPN YouTube channel. And as always, shout out to our sponsors at both DraftKings and Raycon, both promo codes THPN. And, talking about with DraftKings right now, there are so many really awesome ways to get in on huge cash prizes. You have obviously the NHL going on, but you also have the NFL season kind of winding down, and we're getting closer to that, really, really big playoff push. College football is entering the final full week of the regular season. We're getting closer to conference championship week, and then, of course, bowl season. You also have the NBA going on. College basketball is underway. And so with all of that and more going on, DraftKings is giving you, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, the best place to get to bet on the huge cash prizes out there. So use our promo code THPN when you sign up. And also make sure you go over to buyraycon.com/THPN to get 20 to 50% off your orders for a limited time only for the best quality earbuds and headphones at half the price. So shout out to both of our sponsors at both DraftKings and Raycon for sponsoring this video and everything we do here at the Hockey Podcast Network. We had a pretty interesting week this past week in the NHL. We had some major players being benched. We also had the NHL Global Series, and we'll kind of quickly go through each game. I also want to talk a little bit about William Nylander and the future that he may or may not have in Toronto, and what potentially his new contract could look like. We're also going to talk about Milan Lucic and the incident that he was involved in over the weekend. And we're also going to talk about the new leader in goals in the National Hockey League. And it might be somebody that some of you may be surprised about. So let's kind of jump right into our first topic. And you saw on our thumbnail and the title of this episode, we have to talk about what's going on in Columbus, specifically with the two-star players in Johnny Gaudreau and Patrik Laine. So the Blue Jackets played last night and lost to the Flyers 5-2, which, by the way, Philadelphia, second place in the Metropolitan Division right now, still playing some really good hockey in a year where I think most of us expected them to struggle mightily and have another rebuilding year. They're actually playing pretty well. We'll see how long it lasts, but nonetheless, they're off to a really good start. Cannot be said the same for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who right now look like that they're on their way to what could be another very disappointing and not very interesting season for the Blue Jackets. And things are taking a new low, as Johnny Gaudreau, a couple of games ago, when the Blue Jackets lost their seventh game in a row, was benched. And at the time of this recording, Johnny Gaudreau, through 19 games, 2 goals, just 5 assists for 7 points and a plus-minus of -7. So Johnny Gaudreau has still yet to really get going this season and has fairly struggled a bit since he went to the Columbus Blue Jackets at the start of the 2022-23 season. But then the Blue Jackets decided to then bench their other star player for a game, and that is Patrik Laine in last night's 5-2 loss to the Philadelphia Flyers. He was a healthy scratch. Now, for Patrik Laine, who's dealt with some injury last season and obviously this year, he's played in just 9 games, 2 goals, and 1 assist for the Finnish winger, and he is really been struggling a lot as well. And the Blue Jackets as a whole have been struggling a lot, as they have now lost 9 straight games. And so the question now is starting to come up, particularly more, I think, with Patrik Laine than Johnny Gaudreau, but Johnny Gaudreau as well, as this. Is it possible that their time in Columbus is starting to come to an end? It doesn't feel like the Blue Jackets have any sort of direction right now. It feels like they're kind of just throwing guys out there and hoping that maybe something sticks. And there doesn't seem to be a general idea as to what's going to happen. Jarmo Kekalainen, I think, probably has the hottest seat of any general manager right now in the NHL, maybe other, other than what's going on in Edmonton with Ken Holland. But I think right now you look at the Blue Jackets and you don't really see a whole lot of where they're going with it. And I think with Laine, although he's been, injured a bunch, he still can produce a pretty good amount. He's only 25 years of age. We have to remember that. He is still yet to really reach that prime, and he can be a goal scorer. He's played in 471 career games, 200 goals, 182 assists for 382 points. So he's only 18 points away from 400, and he's not even 26 yet. And I think that that's definitely got to be something that is interesting to a lot of teams that may be looking for some more scoring help, that maybe the Blue Jackets are a team that sells heavily with their star players at the deadline. Now, Johnny Gaudreau is in a different situation. He signed a long-term deal last summer with the Blue Jackets, and I don't see the Blue Jackets moving on from Gaudreau this quickly. I also think because of the huge amount of cap that he would take up, I don't see a lot of teams, specifically contending teams, being able to afford it unless they do some form of retention, which the most you could really do is about 50%. So I don't think that Gaudreau ends up leaving. I think that Laine has a higher chance of getting traded. Remember, he wanted out of Winnipeg, got his wish, was traded to Columbus, and he still has yet to really have a lot of team success. He's certainly been able to produce a lot of points, but he certainly has not been able to play on a winning team. And I'm sure if he does become available, if the Blue Jacket season continues to take a nosedive as it is, I think that there's going to be more and more speculation, that guys like Laine and maybe some others will be moved at the deadline. But right now, if you're a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, not a whole lot to be excited about. And I'm really curious to see how long this losing streak goes. Remember, you look at the San Jose Sharks, they already had a double-digit losing streak earlier this year. And now, again, we're only just about a little more than a month into the NHL season. And we have the potential to see already our second team this season lose double-digit games, which would be crazy. Which would be absolutely crazy to see if that ends up being the case. As a hockey fan, you're kind of fascinated by it, but if you're a Blue Jackets fan and or Sharks fan, you don't obviously want to deal with that. Nobody does. So really, it's going to be a matter of wait and see for Columbus. But right now, I think we're leaning a lot more towards big changes are going to have to be made in the front office, in their roster as a whole. I think it's something that we have to certainly keep our eye on as we move forward here in the season. But right now, for both Gaudreau and Laine, and certainly the Columbus Blue Jackets, things are going from bad to worse. And not a lot of hope right now. So let's kind of shift from we're talking about that to talking about another really exciting event or events that happened over this past week from November 16th to yesterday, and that was the NHL Global Series over in Sweden. And this was a big one. And by the way, we had some tremendous live watch-alongs. We had a couple giveaways as well for that. So thank you to everybody who participated. Thank you to everybody who interacted on there. And great job by all of our hosts doing those games. It was absolutely a blast to not only watch the live watch-alongs, but to watch the games as well. And let's kind of quickly go over the 4 games that happened in this year's Global Series. And we'll start with a pretty dramatic one as the Ottawa Senators, with 1.2 seconds to go in overtime, defeated the Detroit Red Wings 5-4. And Tim Stützle of the Senators had himself a heck of a performance with the game-winning goal in overtime. It was as dramatic as one could get, and it was a phenomenal finish. I think it was a great start to the entire Global Series. It was a great game nonetheless. Alex DeBrincat continues to have a strong season for Detroit. I actually think that the Red Wings are really, really starting to get to a point where I think they're going to start racking up a bunch of wins. I know that they didn't have the world's greatest Global Series, but starting off this week at home against New Jersey Devils on Wednesday, coming off of the Global Series, I do think that there's going to be a period here, not just like we saw earlier in this regular season, but at some point where I think the Red Wings are going to really start to take off a little bit. And I think I'm really curious to see. But nonetheless, Tim Stützle with a great win for the Ottawa Senators in what has been a tough year for them for sure. as we obviously saw Pierre Dorian get fired earlier this season. But this was definitely a signature win and a signature moment for the Ottawa Senators. And look, the Senators came out, they're up 3-0 after one. Red Wings come back and score 4 and answer. They're up 4, they were up 4-3, and then the Senators tied it at 4. Nobody scored in the third period, and it looked like we were going to get ourselves a shootout. But with just about 2 seconds left, even less than 2 seconds, Tim Stützle with the game-winning goal in overtime, about as dramatic as one could be, his 4th of the year on that one. Just a really, really fun game, a really entertaining game, and a really good start to the Global Series. And really, I'm hoping that Tim Stützle can continue to get going here. He's gotten off to a slow start, and I think, hopefully with a big time goal like that, it can really kind of get him going. Now, let's shift over to the second game that we saw in the Global Series, and that was again involving the Red Wings, this time with the Toronto Maple Leafs, as the Maple Leafs came away with a big 3-2 win against the Red Wings. So another close loss for Detroit in this Global Series. For William Nylander, who we're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment, he moved his point streak to 16 games as the Leafs were able to come back from down 2-0 in the third to win that game by the final score of 3-2. Todd Bertuzzi got a goal. Tyler Bertuzzi, not Todd. Todd doesn't play anymore. William Nylander got himself the tying goal. And then the captain, John Tavares, with assists from both Bertuzzi and Nylander, got the game-winning goal with about 5.5 minutes to go in that one. Really exciting. And I should also mention, by the way, as you can see from this picture, the Toronto Maple Leafs, to kind of honor Börje Salming, the former Swedish Hall of Fame player for the Leafs, they actually went with their white jerseys, blue pants, and blue helmet. And I have to be honest with you, we don't see it a lot, but I really, really like that. I don't think every team could pull it off where they wear their home helmet with their, road jersey and, even road pants. But it works with the Maple Leafs, and I would like to see them maybe do that a little bit more moving forward. It's a pretty cool combo, if you ask me. So I was like, when I turned on the game and I saw what they were wearing, I said, wow, that looks pretty good on the ice. And I think also with the whole Detroit red, I don't know, it was just, it might have been the most visually pleasing game to watch in terms of just looking at it from the uniform perspective, but it was a good one nonetheless. And again, great game from William Nylander and Bertuzzi. John Tavares getting the game winner, and the Leafs with a comeback win, who are definitely playing a solid amount. They're in a lot of headlines for a lot of rumors, like we talked about last week. And I think for William Nylander, from Sweden, I believe he is from Stockholm, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, the Swedish-born winger, who was really like the star of the week. He was on like every talk show and every media outlet you could think of in Sweden. For him to have such a big game and then to continue it in their next game, which we'll get to in just a minute, I think is tremendous. So then we go to the third game that happened in this, and this one was between the the Senators and the Minnesota Wild, who were also taking part in this. And the Red Wings were able to, I keep saying the Red Wings, the Senators got themselves the big 2-1 win. So they finish the Global Series winning both of their games, as this one ended up in a shootout. Marco Rossi from Austria got himself the goal in the second period for Minnesota, and then Eric Brandstrom got the lone goal in the third period for the Senators. And then you had Josh Norris get the game-winning goal in the shootout, and Anton Forsberg with a really, really good game, stopping all of the shots he faced in the shootout, as the Senators come away with the win. So the Senators getting themselves some pretty big wins over in Sweden. And like I said before, hopefully those two wins right there could give them a little bit of momentum going into the rest of their regular season. And it was, again, another kind of dramatic game. I know the shootout sometimes isn't always dramatic, but nonetheless, I am really happy that as a whole, and we'll talk about the last game in a minute, that things have been pretty close. Every game has been, one goal. It's been pretty close. And I think overall it's been a very, very entertaining Global Series, if I do say so myself. And then we come to the final game. yesterday, and again with some dramatics as the Toronto Maple Leafs in overtime come back and beat. Well, not really come back, as the Wild more or less were the ones that came back. But nonetheless, despite it all, they came away with a 4-3 win in overtime to beat the Minnesota Wild, as the Leafs also finish a perfect 2-0 in this year's Global Series. And of course, the winner in overtime came from the Swedish kid himself, William Nylander, getting his 12th goal of the year, as he also, I think he did an assist on the Austin Matthews goal, adds himself 2 points and extends his point streak to an NHL best 17, as he has registered a point in all 17 games that the Leafs have played up until this point. Another dramatic and tremendous game to watch and cover, and bravo to the NHL for this Global Series, because you had 4 games that all had their own type of drama, excitement. You had some guys, from that area of Sweden, from Sweden in general, just making some big-time plays. And, of course, the star of the show, William Nylander, just being able to deliver there. A great week, I guess you'd say great week for William Nylander, a great week for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I also did want to mention that Bill Guerin, the general manager for the Minnesota Wild, kind of really laid it into his team after they lost that game, because right now the Wild's penalty kill has been a big issue. Their power play, special teams in general for Minnesota has been very, very not good. And, they've been really not playing all that well, and you kind of wonder if this is going to end up becoming a lost season for the Minnesota Wild. So not a great Global Series for them. And, we'll see if they can make some changes going into it. But I want to stick to talking a little bit more about William Nylander, because, again, phenomenal year so far. 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 points through 17 games, and is currently on an NHL best 17-game point streak. I don't know why he's not being considered more for the Hart Trophy, even though I know he's not leading the NHL in any categories except that point streak. But he has been playing at an unreal level. And knowing that he is going to be an unrestricted free agent at season's end, this is as good of a year as any to really showcase how good he is. And so, again, the last contract he signed prior to the 2018-19 season was a 6-year, $45 million deal, which the cap hit was an average at around almost $7 million, just a little under $7 million at 6.96 AAV. And so really the question right now is more or less what people are saying about his next contract. What is he going to get? What has he earned? I guess is really the question. And for me, I think the best example of what a long-term William Nylander contract would be is the one that David Pastrnak signed last year with Boston, 8 years at just about $11 million. Now, I'm going to say straight up that I don't think William Nylander stays in Toronto long-term. I think that this is probably his last year with the Leafs because, first and foremost, when you look at the big contracts from the star players that the Leafs have, guys like John Tavares, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Morgan Riley, all these guys that I mentioned. And the only guy that seems to be constantly getting screwed out of getting a big money deal is William Nylander. Even when Kyle Dubas was there, Kyle Dubas constantly was making deals for everyone else, but then kind of forcing William Nylander to keep taking a pay cut and not making as much as he, in my opinion, certainly deserved. And it's going to be a question that's going to be brought up. Now, I don't think the Leafs are going to trade William Nylander at the deadline unless they just go into a massive collapse and are so far out of it that there's no point in keeping him around and making a run at the playoffs. I think the Leafs will for sure make the playoffs. It's just going to obviously, again, be a matter of how far will they actually get. They finally got over the hump of getting out of the first round, but they didn't get very far after that. And so it's really going to be a question of what can the Leafs do? But in looking further beyond this season, you have to look at it and say, will William Nylander stay here? I don't think he takes another massive pay cut. He would have to take another massive pay cut and probably make less than the near $7 million he was making. The cap while is going up, is still not going to be enough for the Leafs to keep him around long term. The other problem is this. There aren't going to be very many contending teams that are going to have a good amount to give him what he wants. I have to think of, let's call it, the bad teams that would make the most sense in terms of getting a long-term deal. Teams like the San Jose Sharks, for an example, would be a team like that. Maybe a team like let's throw out, the Ottawa Senators, or maybe even like a team like Buffalo. Buffalo might be the closest that could maybe make a big time deal if they work their cap situation right. So it's going to be tough. I don't think William Nylander's thinking about it too much right now. I don't think he's worrying about it too much. I think he's just focusing on playing the game that he's playing. He's having, like I said, a phenomenal year, 17-game point streak, and I think it's only going to continue. I will be shocked the first game he does not have a point. But he's nothing short of the best player on the Leafs this year, and he continues to roll with, again, a tremendous global series, and now we'll head back with the team to Toronto as he'll continue to try to have a phenomenal and what should be considered right now an MVP type season for number 88 of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we'll see, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments as well. Do you think that Nylander stays in Toronto long term? What do you think his next contract looks like, and all of that? Leave it in the comments. Would love to interact with all of you guys. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit more of a yikes type of moment, as I'd say. And it involves the Boston Bruins, Milan Lucic, who decided to come back this offseason and play for the Bruins once again. Now, the Bruins are having another tremendous year. When all of us thought that it was finally going to be the year that maybe things would not work out, they are picking up where they left off last regular season, But Milan Lucic will probably not be on that journey moving forward. And maybe not for the rest of the year, as Boston Bruins forward, and this comes from a CBS News. I'm reading this from an article from CBS News in Boston, and it reads, Boston Bruins forward Milan Lucic is expected to be arraigned Monday or Tuesday, today or tomorrow, following his arrest late Friday night related to a domestic violent incident. Now, sources told the WBZ TV team that a person in Lucic's home called 911 when he allegedly attacked and choked someone. According to sources, police say Lucic appeared to be drunk when officers responded. And then the Suffolk District Attorney's Office said Lucic is charged with assault and battery on a family member, and he will be arraigned in Boston Municipal Court. And then the Bruins released a statement saying that he is taking an indefinite leave of absence from the team. So it's kind of one of those things when you're a sports fan and obviously right now, if you're a Bruins fan, you say, just when everything's going well, why did this have to happen? And it's a very, very sad thing. And again, it's he allegedly did this. We can't assume anything right now. We have to wait and see what ends up happening with his whole situation. But this is obviously a very, very serious and very scary situation that's going on. Milan Lucic hasn't really done much in terms of production, so I don't think the Bruins are going to be lost without him. He has 2 assists in just 4 games played, so he's been mostly a healthy scratch, not really playing. And so I think this will affect the Bruins a little bit emotionally. You could tell Brad Marchand when he spoke to the media, over the weekend, that clearly it's going to be something that you didn't want to have happen. You don't want to have this happen to anybody, regardless of their situation. But it unfortunately did, and now they have to try to move past it. I think they'll be okay, but this is certainly not something that you want to see. So Milan Lucic, it may be possible that he has played his final game, not just as a Bruin, but maybe in the NHL, especially if he is proven guilty of the assault and battery charge that he is facing right now on a family member, which is not good at all. So only time will tell what happens. Again, he will be arraigned in a municipal court in Boston either today or tomorrow. And that's about as far as we can really go with it. So that's the information that we have, and we'll see what happens moving forward. Now, lastly here, before we wrap up today's episode, I want to talk about the new NHL leader in goals. And to some people, it might come as a surprise, as it is none other than Winnipeg Jets forward Kyle Connor, who after their last game now has 14 goals in 17 games played. He has 8 assists as well to go with it for 22 points. Now, the Winnipeg Jets have had themselves a pretty tremendous month of November, as a lot of the questions about the futures of obviously Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck, well, they've been kind of determined with both of them getting long-term deals. But also the question of where were the Jets going to go this season? Were they going to take a nosedive and have another bad year? Or were they going to, be competitive? And you look at the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, they got a good amount back. That seems to be working for them so far. And Kyle Connor is having another really good year. I think he's one of the more underrated forwards in the NHL. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that he plays in Winnipeg. But the Michigan native from, the United States really, really off to a good start, as he is currently the NHL leader in goals with 14. And we'll see how the Jets continue to progress and how well Kyle Connor goes. And I think what's been fun about this year so far is a lot of the back and forth with guys that we don't usually see getting a lot of goals and really being, getting this much attention for the success that they've had so far, even though, again, it is still early. Nobody has played 20 games yet this year. But for guys like Kyle Connor to have the success they're having, and right now the NHL's leader in goals, I think is tremendous. And he's certainly off to a good start in what looks to be another all-star year for the Winnipeg Jets forward. So right now, Kyle Connor, Winnipeg Jets, your new NHL leader in goals. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us today on this edition of NHL Weekly. As always, thank you guys for taking time out of your day to check these episodes out. We always greatly appreciate it. Make sure, again, to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time a new episode of NHL Weekly drops here every Monday on the Hockey Podcast Network YouTube channel. Don't forget also to follow us on social media at HockeyPodNet on Instagram. You can also follow us at HockeyPodNet on Twitter, and follow my personal Twitter at the NVP Show to interact with me over there. And last but certainly not least, because I like to do a little self-plug, I am wearing a New Jersey Devils Hockey Fights Cancer jersey, which is one of my favorite, by the way, and it is the Hockey Fights Cancer month. But do me a favor, go check out my podcast, the Devil's State of Mind podcast, which covers the New Jersey Devils right here on the Hockey Podcast Network. New episodes weekly covering everything you need to know about the New Jersey Devils. You can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify if you're subscribed over there. Also, check us out on YouTube as well, Devil's State of Mind Podcast, and subscribe there. Would greatly appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter at Devil's State, Instagram at Devil's State of Mind, and also give us a like over on Facebook as well. But again, thank you so much for checking us out on this edition of NHL Weekly, and we will see you in the next episode. Everyone have a great week, and as always, make sure to rock on.